Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching 90 Day Fiancé, the episode from this week. Let's watch it. I'm going to react to it. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. As I always say, don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, get one. You deserve it. Let's watch.
Yeah, so basically how I keep the messes under control is I just have him have a whole room to himself that he does like his gaming in. And he sleeps in there most of the time too.
So you guys generally sleep in different rooms?
So this is something that a lot of people will do, but they don't want to talk about because of the way our society shames them. There are plenty of couples who sleep in different rooms. Some people don't even live together for various different reasons. We have this cultural idea that if you are in a relationship, then you should sleep in the same room. And if you want to, then by all means do that, and a lot of people will do that. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with people sleeping in different rooms for various different reasons. Maybe one person snores a lot. Maybe one person does shift work where they work graveyards, so they need to be in a different room. Maybe they just want their own space to spread out. Some people don't like to be touched when they're sleeping, and they want, to be able to really just, relax in their own room. And if you can afford that and accommodate that, then there's nothing wrong with that. It has no bearing on the quality of the marriage. There is some research suggesting that if you sleep in different rooms, it can possibly lead to bad things. But I think that's more of a correlation versus causation thing, meaning that if you're sleeping in separate rooms, I think it might be a little bit more correlated with distress in the marriage anyway. But there are plenty of marriages that are doing really well and maybe even do better because they have their own space. So the sister is reacting to that, like, wait, you guys don't sleep together? Now, if the sister is worried, and I know she is, about Kalani and the way that Asuelu treats her, then I think she has ground to stand on. But with this particular detail, I don't think we need to criticize that.
He basically comes in the room when, he wants to have sex, and that's it. Yeah. We have like conjugal visits at this point.
Ew.
Yeah. What?
I don't know. I just feel like that's weird.
Right. And as I always say, just because something is weird or it feels different to you does not mean that it's bad. People do all sorts of things that are different from the way that you live your life. Some people eat things that are things that you would never eat, like pig's feet or something. You might never eat that and look at that and say, ew, something's gross about that. Okay, it's not something you would do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's negative or bad. And we need to get away from that heuristic of, it feels different to me, therefore it's bad. So it feels different to the sister because I think it feels different to most people because most people don't live in or sleep in different rooms. She's also trying to process the image of her sister having sex with Asuelu, which is not, I think, palatable to her. So I think that's another part of her judgment in this moment.
Go use your hand. Bye. Do you feel like there's any, even romance between you two?
No.
Right. So that you can absolutely criticize or be concerned about or raise some alarms around. That for the two of them, they have had a lot of conflict. Asuelu, acts in immature ways, irresponsible ways. He literally lies to her about things that you wouldn't want people to lie to someone about. And there's apparently no romance. Maybe she doesn't love him anymore. That absolutely, as a sister, you could and should be concerned about.
There's nothing. This is the first time telling anyone that Asuelu's been sleeping in his game room every night. I haven't told anyone that we haven't been sleeping in the same bed. I guess I didn't really realize it until I started talking about it with my sister. And I think in marriage, you just...
So that's kind of interesting. She said, I don't think I really realized it until I verbalized it. I didn't realize, or I didn't fully accept or internalize or get used to this reality that he was not sleeping in our bed anymore. He was sleeping in another room until I said it out loud. This is one of the benefits of therapy, by the way. Just saying things out loud can actually be very helpful for self-awareness or evaluating things, thinking about what your life is going, and obviously talking with friends. We're very verbal creatures. We think in words, and so it's important to say those things, and just thinking them doesn't always fully realize the reality to us. And so she's saying, my point is that for Kalani, she might have a personality type or a defense or something in which she doesn't like, or there's something scary, or when there's something going on in her life that isn't going very well and she doesn't know how to resolve it, she feels like she's trapped or she doesn't know what to do about it, then she goes into denial about it, or she'll stuff it or something. Instead of going, okay, well, this is the reality now. What should I do about it? And that a lot of people do this. But she is now verbalizing it and thinking, wow, I guess we don't even sleep in the same room anymore. There's no romance. He feels like a roommate to me. This is usually the kind of talk of someone about to divorce. But, who knows? Let's watch.
Get used to things and you don't really question it. I think that's one of those things. We just got used to it. That's how it went. But it just sucks.
Yeah. And I will also say, in relation to what I was saying earlier about people sleeping in different rooms, that it absolutely can be a sign or even a contributor to the decline of satisfaction in a relationship. For one person to just be like, I don't even want to sleep next to that person. I don't want to be near them, and so I'm just going to sleep in another room. That can absolutely be a part of a bad place for a relationship. My point earlier was just the fact that a couple that sleeps in separate rooms or even separate homes, that doesn't necessarily mean that their relationship is in dire straits.
It's never reciprocated at all.
It needs to be. You're like, no, you can't just walk in and boink me and then walk back out and go to sleep.
Well, I think it is partly my fault because he wasn't taught to do anything. And he has no understanding of what real love is because he didn't see it from his parents. So I feel this need.
Okay, we finally got a detail there. I have been wondering about Asuelu's childhood and his parents. We know the mom and a couple of the sisters, but apparently there's a lot of siblings, and Asuelu has a dad that we haven't heard about. I've been wondering about that, but Kalani just said that Asuelu did not have a good model for what marriage and what love looked like. Was it that the dad abandoned the family? Was it that the mom abandoned the family? Was it that there was a lot of conflict in the parents? Are the parents still together, but they were very cold to each other? But it does give us a little bit more detail, and I think most of us could have surmised that Asuelu's upbringing wasn't necessarily ideal.
It makes you feel loved every day and helps you. You're asking literally for the bare minimum from your husband. You want to feel loved, and I think at the very least, that's what you should feel.
So from the beginning, I have been guessing that if they had a couples therapist, that they could find love again, similar to in the beginning of their relationship. The problems that, at least the way it looks like to me, are not insurmountable. They went to couples therapy, it sounded like once, and then the pandemic hit. Maybe they didn't go back. I don't know. But the kinds of things that I see in this couple that are, I think, preventing them from having a satisfactory relationship, I think are fixable. Now, at this point, it might not be fixable. She and him might be so contemptuous and hurt by each other that they don't really have any motivation to love each other again. But the kinds of things that they're suffering from is they have an overfunctioner, underfunctioner dynamic. They have a mom-son dynamic. I have treated so many couples with that dynamic. It usually comes from childhood for both individuals. One person chooses this role and the other person chooses that role. And that's not super easy to fix, but with some awareness and with some healing of childhood traumas, there can be movement in that. They also have a hard time communicating about their feelings, Kalani as well. Kalani's she can talk about her feelings more easily, but I think she also could benefit from some ability to speak more differentiatedly. So the kinds of things that they suffer from are fixable, and I find it to be a tragedy that it sounds like they didn't continue with couples therapy.
Like, I feel like I was in a relationship this whole time and I haven't been. I've been by myself this whole time.
At some point, you have to think about yourself.
And the narrative that has frequently been put forth on the Kalani side of things with the sister and the parents is that Asuelu is either evil or something's wrong with his brain or he's just terribly immature and there's really just no hope for him. He's a lost cause. Instead of thinking, well, what are we doing to each other that is creating a vicious cycle that's happening? Just let me put this out here. I don't know if this is true, but given what I've seen between the two of them, it's possible that he has a tendency to act immature and he has a tendency to get scared of her sometimes and will lie or will act as an underfunctioner as a way of protecting himself. You know, like let's say that let's say one day he wakes up and he's just like, you know what, I'm going to be a good father. I'm going to be a good husband. I'm going to be a good worker. I'm going to be a grown man. I feel good about myself. I'm going to do it. And then he tries to do something around the house. Maybe he tries to parent the kids, in a primary way. And then Kalani sees that and doesn't like what he's doing. Maybe what he's doing isn't terrible, but it's not in her style, and she's used to doing things in her style. And so she criticizes him. And he gets hurt by that. Maybe he gets a little bit too hurt by that because he doesn't have a lot of self-esteem to stand on. And the way he communicates about that is he just slinks off and plays video games all day instead of saying, hey, honey, I think I've got this, or I do it a different way, or, your feedback is interesting. Maybe I'll incorporate that as I play with the kids. But instead, he disappears, and then he goes into the room and starts to play video games. And then Kalani sees that and thinks, oh, he's an immature little boy. I can't depend on him. I'm beginning to hate him. He's sitting in the room going, I'm beginning to hate her because she doesn't let me ever do anything. I woke up this morning thinking I wanted to do a good job. I was actually playing well with the kids for 45 minutes, and then Kalani came in the room and just ruined everything with her criticism of me, which she always does. So I don't know if that sort of thing happens, but if you do that over and over and over again, that style of dynamic between the two of them and misunderstanding each other and not being differentiated, for him to be differentiated, I think it's easy to see. But for her, she needs to be able to walk in the room and say, okay, he's parenting the kids right now in a way that I don't like. Is it a good idea that I criticize him now in front of the kids? Or should we have a conversation later on? Or should I just let him do it? Because, I make mistakes sometimes too. I'm not a perfect parent. Maybe I should just let him make some mistakes and how is he supposed to learn as a dad if I'm always criticizing him and commenting all the time on what he's doing? Maybe I should just let him be. And, the worst case scenario, like, I don't know. I don't think a terrible thing is going to happen. So that would be a differentiated move from her part. I don't know. But so I think if you rinse and repeat this pattern over and over and over again, then you can absolutely get to where you are at with this, instead of the interpretation of Asuelu is evil or, he's a lost cause.
And a lot of people in Samoa, divorce is just not an option. Like, they're raised to think if you choose to get married, that's it. So I think he thinks that there's no consequences for any of his actions or even inactions, what he doesn't do. He just thinks that we're always going to be together regardless. And I feel like, what is the point of being married? Why?
So the other interpretation or conceptualization of what's happening is the way that it feels to her, which is that he just doesn't really seem to care about me. He is treating me like I'm his mom and doesn't listen to me, defies me, he doesn't seem to be interested in being at my level. Even if I try to respect him, he still just is always treating me like I am his mom. There are people like this. We might call them dependent personality disorder. We might call them other things. But these people have tremendous traumas that result in them when they are in a romantic relationship or a close relationship. They will always want the other person to be over them, and they will force that person into that position. I've treated many people like this, individuals and couples. And it can be very frustrating if you're in the Kalani position, because even if you're like, I don't want to be your mom. I don't want to have power over you. I want you to be an equal. Can't we just be equal? And the Asuelus of the world will say, yeah, of course, let's be equal. But when it comes down to it, day-to-day operations, they keep pushing that other person into the over-functioning position and socializing and kind of manipulating subconsciously the other person into criticizing and even, coming down on them the way a parent would. So this could be largely generated by Asuelu's issues. I just don't know. If you want to support what we're doing here on this channel, the best thing that you can do is you can become a patron of the podcast by going to patreon.com. Patrons of the podcast get access to really our best episodes. We have hundreds of episodes that are only available just for patrons. I go deeper on the issues that I touch on in these videos. So if you want to, go to patreon.com, become a patron of the podcast. It would really warm my heart if you did that. But it just warms my heart that you're just watching, honestly. But truly. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.